in the dry, whistling winds of Dry Creek, Wyoming, a place where folks believed only whips and reins could make a Mustang bow, a 16-year-old girl stepped into the steel pen with nothing but a gentle gaze and a whisper. No one could have imagined that single touch would ignite a journey that would ripple across the world, defying doubt, science, and centuries of belief about the line between man and nature. On a rare spring morning, when the wind took a break in Dry Creek, Wyoming, the sky stretched a soft pearl-gray hue over pastures still groggy from a long winter. Red dust settled quietly over old pickup trucks parked in a ring around the open field. The annual horse fair was underway, the biggest event of the year in this corner of the West. Clatter of hooves, the snap of reins, and the chatter of ranchers from all over blended into a rhythm that could only be called Western music. Callie Rayner stepped down from her father's battered Ford pickup, her worn leather boots making a faint hiss in the soft dust. 16 years old, she was lanky, her light brown hair tied up in a high ponytail, and her gray-blue eyes carried a depth like the sky before a storm. In her hand was a pair of scuffed leather gloves, and in her eyes barely contained excitement and unease. Ethan Rayner, a man in his early 40s with more the look of a mechanic than a rancher, nodded at his daughter and turned toward the truck bed. "Come on. Still early. We'll check out the first row of pens," he said, his voice low and rough from engine grit and tobacco. But Callie didn't follow. She turned, eyes drawn to the far edge of the fairgrounds, where almost no one stood. There, inside a large makeshift steel pen reinforced with old wood and pipe, stood a black horse. It wasn't moving, head hung low, but its gaze cut straight through the world. "You saw it, huh?" Ethan exhaled as he stepped up beside her. "They're calling him Midnight. Came in from Idaho, threw off 3 riders, broke arms, ribs. They say he was rounded up by helicopter out of the Oahe Range." Callie didn't look away. "He's not crazy, Dad. He's just looking for someone he can trust." Ethan turned to look at her. The words sounded both foolish and familiar. That was how she'd always been. Noticed things others didn't. At 7, Callie had calmed a panicked mare right after birth, just by sitting beside it all afternoon, humming softly. No one had taught her that. She just felt. It was something he, a man who could fix engines but never hearts, would never fully understand. "Callie," Ethan said, his tone sharpening, "I know you want to help, but this horse isn't Duchess. He's not the type you can pat and whisper into obedience." "I know," she said quietly, "but I can feel him. He's not angry. He just won't be forced." Ethan looked at her. The way she stood, back straight, eyes steady, it wasn't recklessness, it was certainty. He sighed. "All right, but I'm standing by the rail, you understand?" She nodded, pulled off her gloves and tucked them into her back pocket. The fairground seemed to slow as the girl made her way toward Midnight's pen. Across the enclosure, a sun-worn man with a frayed cowboy hat and faded denim jacket, Bo Carver, the horse pen's handler, stood with arms crossed. He raised an eyebrow as Callie approached. "Hey kid, this ain't no petting zoo. That one'll kick a gate clean off its hinges." Callie answered with only a look. Then she turned toward Midnight. "Hello there," she whispered, as if greeting an old friend stumbled upon after years apart. The horse didn't respond, its eyes flicked toward her, then away. Around them, the fair's background noise dulled. The shouting, the dogs, the clinking metal faded into a hush. Callie reached for the gate. It wasn't locked, only held shut with a wooden latch. She slipped inside, moving slowly. Each step seemed placed with care, as if not to wake the earth. Her boots touched red dust but left no prints. Midnight turned his head, his ears flicked forward. A small jerk on the chain tether rattled it slightly. Callie kept walking. She raised her right hand, palm up, holding it level with the horse's muzzle, just beyond arm's reach. The horse inhaled deeply. Callie closed her eyes. "You don't have to fight anymore," she murmured. "I'm not here to win. I'm here to understand." And then, something no one believed could happen, did. Midnight, the black beast who had flung grown men like dolls, took a step toward her, then another, until his muzzle touched the palm of her hand. A few people gasped softly, a few chuckled, thinking it was dumb luck. But Callie did something no one expected. She gently wrapped her arms around Midnight's neck, light as a breeze across water. Then, without a saddle or bridle, she climbed onto his back, bareback. No helmet, no reins. Bo Carver stumbled backward, Ethan lifted a hand to call out, but stopped. His eyes went quiet, but his grip on the steel fence tightened. Midnight held still for a breath's length. Then he screamed, a piercing cry like a soul ripped open. He reared high, kicking violently. Callie stayed balanced, body moving with him like mist. The stallion bucked, spun, lunged in tight circles. But Callie didn't scream, didn't yank, didn't resist. She only whispered, so soft no one else could hear. But Midnight did. And then, whether it was minute 3 or 5, he stopped, breathing hard, dust rising around them like fog. One girl, one horse, standing still as if they'd known each other across lifetimes. Silence fell. Then suddenly a boy's voice broke through. "I'm live streaming this right now," cried Logan, a 12-year-old holding up an old smartphone on TikTok. "A real wild horse whisperer, right here in Dry Creek, Wyoming." That line, accidental innocent, would open the door to everything that followed. Callie slid off Midnight's back, brushed his neck once, then stepped out of the pen. He didn't move, as if carved from breath and stillness. Ethan met her with a silent hug, eyes no longer doubtful. "You just lit a fire, Callie," he said, voice hoarse. "Now we'd better be ready for the light and the shadows it brings." 3 days after the horse fair in Dry Creek, Callie Rayner sat on the front steps of their log cabin. Her phone buzzed constantly in her hand, the screen's glow casting soft shadows under the dark circles beneath her 16-year-old eyes. Inside, the quiet hiss of her father, Ethan's coffee machine, echoed through the house, steady, like the heartbeat of a place once accustomed to silence. But Callie's life, and her family's, was no longer the same. The video Logan had recorded of her riding Midnight, no saddle, no whip, no reins, had pulled in over 2.7 million views in just 48 hours. At first, it only circulated in a small community group for traditional horsemanship. But then digital news sites, animal-loving social accounts, and even influencers began resharing it. Someone had added dramatic background music from The Power of One, and suddenly, the quiet girl from Dry Creek became an internet phenomenon. Callie didn't know whether to feel happy or terrified. She hadn't posted the video. She hadn't asked for attention. It had been just a moment, a connection, something private between her and Midnight. But social media didn't care about that. It twisted sincerity into clickbait. From "the girl who whispered to a wild horse" to "teen hypnotizes Mustang without touch," headlines spiraled out of control. "You shouldn't read all of that," Ethan said, setting a steaming mug down beside her. "It'll make you forget who you are." Callie gave a half smile. "I'm not sure who I am anymore, Dad. Half the world says I'm gifted, the other half says I'm a fake." She opened the latest message. An Instagram user named Equine Purist had commented, "No one tames a wild Mustang in minutes, not unless you drugged it first." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Want me to pay that punk a visit?" Callie let out a faint laugh. "No need, Dad. They don't have to understand. But there's someone I think should." She handed him the phone. On the screen was a long Facebook post paired with a blurry photo from the fair. Her face softened behind a curtain of dust. The post was from Dr. Lowell Thorne, a veteran horse trainer and founder of the Strength Through Control method out of Colorado Springs. "I don't intend to shame a child, but the American horsemanship industry doesn't need another fairy tale to inspire the masses at the cost of safety. A wild Mustang cannot be tamed in minutes unless it's been secretly trained or chemically sedated. If Miss Callie Rayner is truly gifted, I invite her to my ranch to prove it. If not, please stop misleading the public with viral tricks." Ethan lowered the phone and stared at it for a long moment. "This isn't just about you and Midnight anymore," he said. "This thing's gone beyond our backyard." Things were worse at Dry Creek High. Hallways once filled with idle chatter, now buzzed with pointed whispers. Every time Callie walked into class, eyes followed. Every hallway echoed with half-loud rumors designed to sting. "Guess her dad's some kind of horse whisperer mechanic now, huh? Bareback riding is reckless, not talent." In the back row, Jenna McKenna, the daughter of the largest ranch owner in the county, pulled a stack of flyers from her backpack. Each bore the now viral photo of Callie and Midnight, overlaid with bold red letters. "Performance or pretending? Pass these down to Wing B, will you?" Jenna told her clique. "Time to shine some light on this circus act." Callie said nothing. Her grip tightened on her backpack straps, face unreadable. But her heart pounded. She wasn't made for conflict. not built for stages. All she'd ever wanted was to understand horses. That afternoon, on the way home, she opened the old wooden mailbox by the gate and found an envelope. No return address, just her name, handwritten in black ink, Callie Rayner. Inside was a letter, handwritten, slanted script, clear, seasoned, the kind of writing born from miles, not minutes. Callie, I saw the video of you in midnight. I don't believe in magic, but I do believe in intuition and in people who can hear what animals never say out loud. You're young, but if what I saw is real, the world might just need you. My name is Jonas McRae. I used to train horses for the 1st Cavalry Regiment in Utah. I now live at a small horse camp called Red Hollow, tucked deep in the Elk Range. I won't promise fame, but I can offer lessons no book will teach. If you're ready to prove yourself, not to the world, but to yourself, come to Red Hollow. P.S. If you decide to come, don't go alone. There's no cell signal up here, and we've got wolves. Bring an adult. An apple pie if possible. Jonas Callie, read it 3 times. The letter didn't feel fake. Not like a prank. It was too specific, too personal. She ran inside. Ethan was flipping through vet bills on the kitchen table, head buried in a notebook tracking her mom's 2nd round of chemotherapy from 2 weeks ago. Dad, Callie gasped. I need to go somewhere. Ethan looked at her. The kind of father-daughter look only Americans seem to share. No questions, just instinct. He heard her voice and knew how much it mattered. Where to? He asked, as calmly as if he were asking about the milk. Red Hollow, a man named Jonas. He's a retired cavalry trainer. He said I could learn from him. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he watched her for a long moment. Her eyes were shining in the same way her mother's had years ago, when she dropped out of Denver State to become a veterinary nurse. I'll drive, he said finally. But I'm not bringing apple pie. Cornbread's the best I can do. Callie threw her arms around him. Emotion swelled in her chest, not out of fear, but for the first time, out of certainty. This was the road she was meant to take. Elsewhere, hundreds of miles away on his Facebook page, Dr. Lowell Thorne updated his status. Word is, the girl's headed for McRae's camp. I used to respect Jonas, but if he's letting a child think intuition is enough to ride a horse, then he's too old to tell the difference anymore. In the comments, a user named Rachel Boone, editor at Equine World Journal, replied, I'll be watching. This story isn't over yet. Red Hollow had no signpost, no big gates, no cameras, no directions on any map. Just a winding dirt road that snaked between towering pine trees, cutting into the heart of the Elk Range, where the sun set late and the wind smelled like old snow tangled in sap and resin. Ethan Rayner's battered truck rumbled along, bouncing hard each time a tire dipped into a pothole. Callie sat beside her father, holding a coiled lead rope tightly, her gaze sweeping the forest as if she might spot something magical at any moment. Midnight was in the trailer hitched to the back. The black horse wasn't used to long-distance hauling yet, but Callie had made several stops to let him rest. Each time, she whispered into his ear, words no one else understood. Except Midnight. Ethan glanced at her. You sure about this? This man? He could be anybody. You saw the letter, Callie replied, and the way he wrote it, it felt like horse talk. Not pretty. Just honest. The truck rounded a sharp bend, and suddenly, a deer darted across the road. Ethan slammed the brakes. Both father and daughter jolted forward with the force. When the truck finally stopped, a plain wooden gate stood in front of them, made from old pine trunks. Hanging crookedly on it was a weathered wooden sign, Red Hollow, where silence speaks. This is it, Callie whispered. Jonas McRae appeared like he'd stepped right out of the silence itself. Tall, with silver hair shaved close to his scalp, a neatly trimmed beard, and a hollow where his left leg should have been, replaced with a wooden prosthetic. But his eyes, gray and ashy like spent campfire coals, lit up when he saw Callie step out of the truck. You really came, he said. His voice was rough, but steady, and brought cornbread. Better than I hoped. Ethan shook his hand. I'm Callie's dad, Ethan Rayner. Jonas nodded. I know. She has your eyes, kind that won't bow easy but still bend when it's time to listen. They brought Midnight to a quiet section of the stables, wide pens made of pine, open to the woods. No chains, no electric prods, just winding lanes strewn with hay, leading out into open pasture. This place isn't where we train horses to sell, Jonas said. It's where horses remember who they were. Callie laid a hand on the wooden railing. It's like a revival station. Jonas paused for a moment, then smiled, for the first time since they'd met. Exactly. The next morning, instead of a test, Jonas led Callie to another pen, where a thin gray horse stood with its face to the wall, unmoving. A long scar curved down its neck. Its left eye was clouded like shattered crystal. Sable, Jonas said. This horse used to be a star in a Texas circus, until he broke a leg jumping through a ring of fire. Instead of treating it, they drugged him and used him 3 more weeks. When he collapsed, they sold him like old equipment. Callie said nothing. She sat down 3 meters from the pen, no calling, no coaxing, just presence, stillness. 3 hours passed. The sun shifted from harsh gold to gentle amber. The wind carried bits of straw and pine dust. Sable remained still. So did Callie, eyes half closed. By the 4th hour, the horse moved, just a flick of the head, like it was listening to something beneath the wind. Jonas stood still in the shadows. Ethan, from a distance, pressed a hand over his chest, his face caught between awe and something more fragile. Callie slowly opened her eyes. No triumph, no gasp, just a soft tilt of her head, and then she touched her forehead to the ground. A simple gesture, but in the language of horses, it meant trust, the highest form. And Sable took 1 step toward her, then another, until only inches stood between them. Jonas turned away, but not fast enough. Callie saw the shimmer in his eyes. That evening, they sat around the wood stove. Callie sipped herbal tea. Jonas rolled a carved wooden cup in his hands, eyes fixed on the fire. "You know why I didn't test your skills when you arrived?" he asked. Callie shook her head. "Because if you have it, you don't need a test, and if you don't, no test will make it real." She chuckled. "So what was today?" Jonas looked at her. "Proof. For me and for you." Silence settled between them. Then he spoke again, softer this time. "There's a national horse fair coming up in Dallas. I don't believe in competitions, but that's a place where people listen. If you've got something to say, maybe you should go, not to perform, but to show there's another way to be with a horse." Callie bowed her head. She didn't know if she was the best, but she knew one thing for sure. This was her path. The next morning, as Callie led Midnight across the open field behind Red Hollow, Sable stood at a distance and let out a soft whinny, not of fear, not of pain, but as if saying, "Hello." Texas in March wasn't scorching, but the air still carried the dry scent of sun-baked grass and sweat lingering from days of trampling boots. The Dallas National Horse Fair, the largest equestrian event in the South, was alive with movement. Veteran trainers, media crews, horse buyers, and wide-eyed enthusiasts had all gathered under the massive tents and stadium lights. Callie stood backstage at the main arena, an oval field lined with white sand, surrounded by towering grandstands and LED screens broadcasting the event live across the nation. Her heart pounded. She wore only a worn chambray shirt, faded jeans, and dust-stained Wyoming boots. No makeup, no flashy cowboy hat, but her eyes burned quietly, like a flame waiting for the match. "Miss Rayner," came a voice behind her. It was Jonas, leaning against the wooden rail, hands in the pockets of his old leather jacket. "If that horse decides to bolt, let him. Just don't bolt in some other way." Callie smiled, her nerves easing a little. "I don't think he will. We made a deal. He stays and I stop shaking, hopefully." Jonas nodded. "A little shaking from someone honest. That horse will trust it more than any suit of armor." The loudspeakers crackled. Next up, a special appearance from Dry Creek, Wyoming. Please welcome 16-year-old Callie Rayner and her wild Mustang Midnight. Callie led Midnight onto the arena floor. A buzz of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Curious, skeptical. In the front row, wearing a white hat, stiff-collared shirt, and a clip-on mic, sat Dr. Lowell Thorne, the traditional horse training expert from Colorado. Beside him sat Jenna McKenna and her father, owner of Horseshoe V Ranch, the man who'd once declared, "Wild horses only belong in 2 places, rodeos or slaughterhouses." The spotlights hit. Midnight hesitated. His breath blew out thick and fast, muscles tightening like a pulled bowstring. Callie whispered, "No one's making you do anything. Just be here, with your true self." She walked to the center of the arena and did something no one expected. She removed the reins. Then the saddle. Gasps and stifled laughs rose from the stands. A few heads shook in disbelief. Dr. Thorne leaned over to whisper something to a reporter. Callie placed a hand over her heart. Then she extended her arm toward Midnight. "Only when you're free can you choose to trust." And if you choose not to, that's still the right choice. Midnight didn't move. Callie took 2 steps back, then sat down in the middle of the arena, cross-legged, still, eyes closed, one hand resting lightly on the ground. 10 seconds, 20, a full minute. Thousands held their breath. The big screen zoomed in. Callie looked like a girl asleep in the dust of a world too loud to listen. Then, without warning, Midnight stepped forward, 1 step, then another. He walked to her, lowered his head, and gently touched her forehead with his muzzle. The crowd erupted. Callie opened her eyes but said nothing. She stood, turned her back. Midnight followed. No commands, no tack, no reins. She jogged softly. He trotted behind. She stopped. He stopped. She turned. He turned. A silent dance, not trained, not forced, but carried by breath, heartbeat, and trust. Dr. Thorne leapt from his seat. "She's using hand signals," he barked. But just then, Callie lifted both arms high, then dropped them to her sides. Midnight kept circling her, as if drawing an invisible circle made of loyalty. In the back row, an old man whispered, "She's not commanding, she's accompanying." The performance ended in thunderous applause. When Callie bowed to the crowd, she looked at Midnight. He tilted his head, awkward, almost silly. But someone in the audience wiped away a tear. Jonas stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. "You just shattered a whole doctrine," he murmured. "But don't let it sweep you up. There are still horses out there, waiting for a girl who knows how to be silent." Callie nodded. "I didn't come to make noise. I came so creatures that can't speak can finally be heard." That night, the video of her performance hit 3 million views in 12 hours. Headlines flooded every platform. 16-year-old girl tames wild Mustang without whip or reins. A Mustang bowed not from fear, but love. Real-life Texas moment. A girl and her horse speak without words. But to Callie, success wasn't measured by views. It was in Midnight's eyes. That night, as he stood quietly beside her cabin stall, breathing slow and steady, like a promise. The next morning, a letter arrived at Red Hollow. From Dr. Eliza Monroe, University of Arizona. Message: "I believe you. But science must confirm what the heart already knows." Callie had never imagined she'd find herself standing on the grounds of a university, surrounded by whiteboards, heart rate monitors, and people with lanyards who all mispronounced her name. But that morning, as she stepped out of Jonas's old pickup truck parked in front of the Red Hollow Field Research Center, she knew a new chapter had begun. The Red Hollow Ranch had been temporarily transformed into a field laboratory. The stables were now divided into 2 clearly marked zones. One was led by Dr. Eliza Monroe's team, where traditional training methods were in full swing: reins, rope halters, blindfolds, and loud commands. The other zone was Callie's, simple, open, quiet. Nothing but dry grass, a few logs for sitting, and wild horses free within a small enclosure. Dr. Monroe was a lean woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and calm speech. Dressed in a plaid button-up shirt, khaki pants, and dust-covered hiking boots, she looked more like a mountain guide than a globally honored researcher. "We're not here to challenge you," Monroe told Callie on the first day. "We're here to understand what happens when trust replaces technique." Callie nodded without saying much. She wasn't good at explaining, but she believed in looks, and Monroe's eyes didn't mock her. 3 wild Mustangs, newly arrived from Nevada, stood in their pens. They were young, untouched, and untrained. 2 were assigned to Monroe's team. The third, a filly named Ember, was entrusted to Callie. On day 1, scientists fitted the horses with cortisol sensors, heart rate monitors, and mounted high-speed cameras in the corners of the pens to record even the subtlest behaviors. In Monroe's zone, trainers began by looping ropes around the horses' necks and using soft whips to push them into circular motion. The animals panicked, slamming into metal fencing. One chipped a tooth from stress. It wasn't called violence, but the air was thick with tension. Callie didn't use anything on Ember. She just sat on the grass, reading a book. Sometimes she hummed an old country song her mom used to sing in the kitchen. At first, Ember kept a 20-foot distance. Her eyes were wary, ears upright, twitching at every sound. But after a few days, she began inching closer. Sometimes toward the water trough Callie had moved near herself. Other times, just to listen. Callie kept a journal, written in pencil on soft leather pages. Day 5, Ember stood less than 6 steps away. "She doesn't look at me like I'm something foreign anymore. It's like I'm an echo she remembers from somewhere." By day 10, Ember gently laid her muzzle on Callie's shoulder. At that exact moment, every sensor showed a steep drop in heart rate and cortisol. The filly's body relaxed for the first time. In the other zone, the horses still resisted human touch, except when restrained. One was pulled from the study due to stress-induced inflammation. When results were compiled, Monroe invited Callie to her office, a simple wooden cabin whose walls were covered in black and white photographs of wild horses from the Four Corners region. On her desk lay stacks of data, charts, hormone graphs, behavior logs, and raw footage. "You know what this means?" Monroe said, pointing to a green spike on a chart. "Ember isn't just doing better, she's seeking humans out." Callie clutched her sleeve. "I don't know if I'm doing anything right. I'm just not doing what scares her. No force, no threats. I'm just waiting for her to choose." Monroe smiled. "And that is exactly what science is trying to remember, from a 16-year-old girl in Dry Creek." The research paper titled, "Trust Before Training: A Comparative Behavioral Study on Mustang Horses," was published in Equine Ethics and Behavior Journal. The day it dropped, Red Hollow was flooded with calls from animal welfare groups, therapeutic riding centers, and even Utah's state officials, asking to learn Callie's approach. Jonas read the paper 3 times. On the third, he quietly placed it inside a glass frame above his mantle. "You're not just changing horses," he told Callie as they sat by the fence during sunset. "You're changing the way people see horses." Callie looked out toward the field. Ember was playing beside Midnight, something no one believed possible between 2 wild-born Mustangs from different states, neither of whom had ever trusted anyone. "Maybe we're not supposed to train horses the way we were taught," she whispered. "Maybe we're supposed to listen to them, so we can relearn how to be human." The very next day, an email arrived at Red Hollow. From Protect Elephants Now, Johannesburg, South Africa. Subject: Can trust cross species? When the small plane from Protect Elephants Now touched down at Johannesburg airstrip, Callie felt like she'd just landed on another planet. Not because of the miles traveled, but because of the air itself. Thick with dry sun, the scent of scorched grass, and red dust clinging to her Wyoming boots. Only this wasn't Dry Creek anymore. And the soul she'd come to reach wasn't a horse. A Land Cruiser with the organization's logo waited at the edge of the tarmac. Behind the wheel was a kind-faced African man named Themba, about her father's age, with gentle eyes. "Tembo is waiting," he said in a deep Swahili-laced accent. "He won't let anyone near." Tembo was a baby elephant, not yet 2 years old, orphaned after a poaching raid. Rangers had found him standing silently over his mother's body. He hadn't cried. He hadn't moved. No one knew how he'd survived. All they knew was he let no one close. Every attempt to approach ended in a whip of the trunk or a trumpet so full of grief it rattled the bones. Callie was brought to a quiet sanctuary hidden deep in the arid grasslands. She saw Tembo from a distance, massive for a baby, but under the fading sun, he looked like a child lost inside a body too big for his sorrow. "You can't use what worked with horses," Monroe had warned her over a grainy Zoom call. "Elephants feel through touch more than sight. You'll need time and silence." On the first day, Callie sat 10 paces away from the fence. She didn't call, didn't coax. She brought nothing but a cloth scented with fabric from Tembo's mother's blanket. She placed it gently on the ground and sat beside it. Still, quiet. Tembo didn't react. On day 3, a staff member named Ayanda quietly set down a basket of fruit near Callie. "He was caught once, in a smuggler's snare," Ayanda whispered. "They used electric rods. Now any sudden sound makes him flinch so hard he bruises himself." Callie nodded. That night she stayed up learning a few basic Swahili phrases. Pol, gently. Rafiki, friend. Salama, safe. She whispered those words over and over, sitting under the stars while the wind carried the cries of night birds. On day 7, Tembo finally stepped toward the cloth. He didn't touch it, just sniffed, but his ears lowered. For the first time. Then, fate struck in the black of a moonless night. A poaching group had breached the perimeter. They cut power, slashed through fencing, set up trap nets near the elephant compound. Alarms blared through the compound. Flashlights danced in clouds of dust. Callie jolted awake. She ran barefoot through the chaos, following the shouts toward Tembo's pen. He was caught, tangled in wire mesh. He thrashed, terrified. His trumpeting roared like thunder through the plain. The staff held back, afraid he'd trample himself in panic. But Callie didn't hesitate. She crawled under the broken fence. No safety gear, no tranquilizer, no plan, just her voice, trembling but steady. Pull, 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 Tembo. It's me, Salama, you're safe. She dropped to the dirt just an arm's length from his flailing trunk. Blood trickled from his front leg, but his eyes blinked. And then, what no one believed possible happened. Tembo lay down. The camp went silent. No one spoke, no one moved. Callie slowly reached out, touched the wrinkled curve of his forehead. Tembo didn't flinch, he just breathed. For the first time in his shattered journey, he exhaled peace. The rescue team moved in, freed him. But Tembo didn't run. Instead, he turned and gently tapped Callie's shoulder with the tip of his trunk, as if pressing a silent seal over the one person who had touched the depth of his pain. The video of that moment spread faster than the Dry Creek Fair clip. But Callie didn't know that. She was sitting beside Tembo in recovery, softly humming a Swahili lullaby. Ayanda had taught her only hours earlier. Lala salamam dogo wangu. Sleep well, little brother of mine. When she returned to the U.S., Callie didn't go straight home. She stopped at Red Hollow, where Jonas and Monroe were waiting. On the old wooden table lay a folder marked, Project Harmony Circle. Jonas looked at her quietly. You touch something most of us never dare believe in, a connection that crosses borders, species, even grief. Monroe smiled, placing a hand on Callie's shoulder. Let that trust reach even farther. Let's create a place where not just horses, but every wounded soul can be heard. Callie looked toward the field. Ember grazed calmly. Midnight galloped beneath a golden sky like liquid honey. I'll do it, she said softly. But not alone. Autumn in Colorado always carried a scent all its own, wilting grass, crisp mountain wind, and the faint smoke of wood stoves tucked in stone cabins. Callie stood on the hill, gazing down at the valley where a white-roofed barn was nearing completion. That was the place she, Jonas, Monroe, and all the lives the world had woven into hers were building something no one believed could exist outside of fiction. The Harmony Circle. More than just a rescue shelter, Harmony Circle was a sanctuary for wounded souls. Wild Mustangs, orphaned elephants, military service dogs from Middle East war zones, even a lion rescued after over a decade in a circus cage. Each creature bore a wound, some etched on their bodies, others hidden deep in their gaze. And Callie believed healing wouldn't come from force, but from understanding. She had no degree, no academic credentials, but she had midnight. On opening day, the sky stretched clear and endless across the newly leveled pastures. People came from everywhere: scientists, journalists, rescue workers, children with disabilities. Even those who once mocked her now stood silent, waiting to see what might unfold. Midnight was brought out. No bridle, no whip, no saddle. His black coat shimmered under the sun like starlight on a still lake. The crowd hushed as Callie stepped beside him. She didn't bow, didn't speak. She just stood there. One beat, two. Then, like something sacred passed between them, Midnight slowly bent his knees and knelt before her, a gesture no one had ever taught him. Applause didn't come immediately. People were too stunned. Then slowly, wave by wave, they stood, they clapped. Not for a performance, but because they had just witnessed something beyond method, beyond training, something real, something human. Later, Callie stepped onto the wooden platform. She held the microphone without notes, because everything she needed to say was already in her heart. Someone asked me why I named this place Harmony Circle, she began. I used to think only music or philosophy needed harmony. I was wrong. These beings here, they need to live, to breathe, to be trusted. Just like we do. She paused. Her gaze swept the crowd. There was no trace of the 16-year-old girl from Dry Creek anymore. Only a young woman who had once knelt inside a snare with a trembling elephant. We weren't born to dominate the earth. We were born to walk beside it. Every living soul has a spirit, and a spirit doesn't break with pressure. It only heals through trust. In the audience, Jonas wiped his glasses. Monroe nodded, her smile radiant with quiet pride. That evening, as the sun stretched like silk over the valley, Callie walked to the back pasture. There were no cameras, no live stream. Just her, Midnight, and a white tarp screen tied between two poles. Logan, now a teen, still clutching that same old camcorder, stood beside her. He hit play. The screen lit up with grainy footage from the Dry Creek Fair, the moment it all began. The girl on the Mustang, bareback, bridleless, fearless but not forceful. The colors blurred with the orange dusk, but Logan's voice rang out, just as it had that day. "You wouldn't believe what this girl has done for her Mustang horse until you see it." Midnight stood beside her. He didn't flinch, didn't bolt, didn't rear. He simply bent his neck and gently touched her shoulder, the same way Tembo once had. And in that moment, Callie knew her journey wasn't ending. It was only just beginning. But this time, she wouldn't walk alone. She would walk beside those once shattered, who had now found each other. If you felt something when Midnight bowed to Callie, leave a comment as simple as it is powerful. Type 0 if you believe in the power of trust. Type 1 if you believe every creature deserves to be heard. Just one number. But it's how we'll know you're still here, feeling this with us. And don't forget to subscribe to True Animal Stories, where you'll meet more souls like Midnight, more people like Callie, and stories too impossible to believe, until you witness them for yourself.